Alright, so I know you've heard the news by now, I'm assuming you have if you're watching this video, that there is a rumor out there that NetherRealm Studios, the maker of Injustice 3, Mortal Kombat, they are going to be making a Marvel video game. Guys, that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. And I'm going to tell you why. Now I know what you're thinking, Justin, why are you being so negative? Well, I'm not trying to be negative. It kind of bothers me a little bit because I get that we have this kind of Mortal Kombat hype going on. We have not heard any news about Mortal Kombat 11, if it's continuing or ending. We did get some, very, on the anniversary or the week of the anniversary for Mortal Kombat 11, we did get some tweets from Ed Boon, basically, going down memory lane about the game and stuff like that and other Mortal Kombat games. So it kind of gave you the feel that Mortal Kombat 11 is over. We didn't get any type of movie skin pack. Oh darn, all you Cole Young fans out there. So I think it just kind of has this opportunity for people to get things hyped up. And while there's nothing wrong with that, I do disagree with doing that because you get fans' hopes up with kind of stuff doesn't seem realistic to me. Make it more of a hype of something that could actually happen, like Injustice 3. Give me another game that could be more of like what would be in their wheelhouse. So if you're not familiar with the rumor, Daniel Richtman, a renowned gaming industry insider, has recently heard that NetherRealm Studios is basically currently working on a Marvel fighting game. Period. That's all he's heard. Doesn't say who he's heard it from. If it was from a developer, we assume it's from a developer. That's basically all the article wrote. All the articles that have covered it, that's all they've written. There's really nothing to go off of there, except that we have this one guy who is basically, I guess, the go-to guy, just like all those Apple insiders, try to predict what Apple's going to release and iPhone 13, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know what his track record is, but I have a couple reasons that kind of put dents in the story, and hopefully from after this video you'll understand why. And I do give some glimpse of hopes at the end, though, about possibly what could happen as far as what games that NetherRealm Studios could be making next. So rights to Marvel. So this is a big one. So I looked into this a little bit, and Marvel Games is the ones that currently have the rights to Marvel, which is owned by Disney. Disney is, of course, the one that has the rights to Marvel, period. So the last game that has come out recently is the Marvel Avenger game for the PlayStation. We also had the Miles Morales Spider-Man game that was exclusive with Sony for the PS5. So we have stuff like that has come out recent, but exclusively the rights to Marvel, owned by Marvel. Warner Brothers, who AT&T and Warner Media, who own Warner Brothers, and all the intellectual properties with that. There is also Warner Brothers Games, who owns NetherRealm Studios, who does Mortal Kombat, Injustice, etc. And then you have TT Games, which is another game subsidiary of Warner Brothers Games. They're the ones that make the Lego games. So they have had Marvel games in the past because they have had previous licensing agreements with Marvel characters. Now that predated when Disney took over, but when Disney did take over Marvel, all those contracts came over with it, and whatever stipulations involved in that, Disney has to abide by those. Now, I do not think anywhere in those agreements does it say that because TT Games has licensing rights to Marvel characters, so does Warner Brothers Games and any other subsidiary that wants to make a game based off of Marvel characters. No way did they ever do that. I would be so shocked if that's what they did. So because of all that, I think if there's anything left in that contract that says that TT Games could still make a game, it would have to be another Lego Marvel game. And I think those games are pretty popular. And right now, with Marvel having new characters come about, I think that a new Lego Marvel game could actually happen. Maybe not in the immediate future, but once we get, more Marvel, the Marvel movies start coming out, like Black Widow, The Eternals, the new Guardians of the Galaxy 3, any of those other movies that come out, Shang-Chi, I mean, that's a totally new character, totally new villains. All that stuff can play out. And, the Lego games do a really good job of world building, and having special villains. So I think that'll work out for them. So another reason this probably isn't going to happen is because Disney is very family friendly when it comes to Marvel. Now you're probably thinking, well, they just added Deadpool into the mix and he's kind of family friendly, not family friendly, which you're right. I agree. But you have to keep in mind that Disney is not going to let you do stuff to their characters that they see is not family friendly and see that's going to hurt the reputation of that character just to make a buck. If anything, they're going to do stuff that's going to heighten their characters, not lower them down. And you may think, well, what if they have a Marvel fighting game? How's that going to hurt them? Well, I then defer to Marvel or MK versus DC. Now, when Mortal Kombat vs. DC came out, which I actually enjoyed that game, I still own that game on the 360. A lot of people were excited because you have two properties coming together, much like Marvel vs. Capcom, Street Fighter versus, Capcom, all that kind of stuff, Marvel vs. Street Fighter. You have stuff like that happening, and those games were very, very popular. Now, you have to keep in mind that those are all from back in the day, and those were contracts that happened pre-Disney. So now that Disney is involved, that's kind of where stuff I think is not, that's going to get in the way. But in Mortal Kombat vs. DC, while it was a successful game at the time, a lot of fans didn't like it because while it did have some of the same mechanics as Mortal Kombat games, people didn't really care for the story. How are these two worlds going to mesh together? And the big gripe for a lot of people was the violence and the gore. It just did not seem like a true Mortal Kombat style game. It seemed more of a pull down into a family-friendly DC game. And a lot of people didn't like that. So that's why we have not seen Mortal Kombat vs. DC 2. I mean, that should be a dead giveaway right there. So going back to that same topic, I would say because of that, you will never see any blood in a Marvel video game. You're probably thinking that's not true. Heroes get injured and they bleed. Okay, yes, in cutscenes and stuff like that, but you will never see blood and gore like you have in a Mortal Kombat game, which NetherRealm Studios makes, again, for a Marvel fighting game. So if you think that NetherRealm Studios is going to make a Marvel fighting game that has some type of like blood, gore, violence, stuff like that, that's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. I will say that even though in the latest, Falcon Winter Soldier, we do see the new Captain America, John Walker, whatever he does to the guy where it has blood on the shield, that's probably the first time we've seen something like that. I don't think that's like the open, gate flood, hey, open the floodgates, say, hey, blood everywhere in the Marvel, universe. I don't think that's going to be the case. Another reason why I don't think they're going to make this happen is because Warner Brothers and Disney are very competitive when it comes to movies in general. They do not, I just don't see the benefit to either one of them to do it this way. And even if it's a Marvel versus DC game, or if it's just a Marvel fighting game in general, I don't know. I don't see why they would do that. I mean, I guess on one hand, you could say that if Warner Brothers were to make a Marvel fighting game, family friendly, just hero versus hero, which I think we've had that in mobile, like cell phone games. We've had that like on iOS and Android. But if Warner Brothers were to make one of those for console, next gen consoles, I just don't think that Warner Brothers would go for that. Disney would want so much control. Disney would want so much profit. And you really think that Warner Brothers is going to have Disney's best interest at heart when they're making a video game? I know NetherRealm Studios is doing it, but they're owned by Warner Brothers. They're owned by AT&T. You really think that they're going to do that? I just don't think that's going to happen. I think right now things are too competitive with HBO Max, Disney Plus, the box office. Right now, Warner Brothers is doing pretty well. Disney has not had that much luck with, some of their entries with them releasing in theaters and doing the exclusive streaming on Disney Plus. So I just don't think they're going to do that. Also, why would they want to do that when Mortal Kombat has been a success right now? Mortal Kombat 11 was the most successful video game in the franchise. It sold a lot of copies. It's still doing well. It's winning gaming awards. They just had they're keeping game competitions. Mortal Kombat, the movie that just came out, it's breaking records. I mean, it had the highest red band trailer for a while. It's right now at the top of the box office, for at least for the pandemic box office. It's got good domestic and worldwide money coming in. It had 3.8 million watched on HBO Max. It's the highest watched HBO Max movie at the time, right now. So why would they do all of that just to turn around and say, well, no Mortal Kombat stuff right now, or any Mortal Kombat adjacent, we're going to do Marvel? Why would you do that? Why would you do that? I don't think they're going to, I just don't see why they would do that. Okay, so what I think could happen. Now, I know some of the stuff is probably far-fetched, but some isn't. So Injustice 3. Fans want Injustice 3. We've been wanting Injustice 3 for a while. Now, I know in the Injustice series, you're like, Justin, why can't they make a Marvel game like Injustice? They probably could. They probably could. I just don't think they would, because you guys have to keep in mind that DC right now, after the Snyderverse, and the Snyder Cut controversy and the new Flash movie is supposedly coming out next year, and the multiverse and all that kind of stuff happening. We have the Batman coming out. You know, DC really needs to have a hit too. And I think with Injustice coming out, that gets fans excited and invigorated again for the DC universe. You know, we just don't need Marvel in this mix, and I just don't really see how that's going to benefit. While it may bring them the money, I just don't see what that's going to do for them. That's not to say that I wouldn't honestly like to play a Marvel fighting game made by NetherRealm Studios. Don't get me wrong. I just don't think that's going to happen. So I think, if anything, we're going to get like an Injustice 3, Mortal Kombat 12. I think we could maybe get some remasters of some previous Mortal Kombat games. They talked about doing something completely different, and I think there's tons of Warner Brothers properties that they could do for fighting games. Why not have like a Warner Brothers Smash Brothers type game of all these intellectual properties? I mean, just from the Space Jam 2 trailer, you saw a bunch of characters that Warner Brothers has at its disposal. Why not do a game like that? I know you're probably thinking, well, that's kind of silly, but, you know, why not have a more mature version of Smash Brothers where you have like Thundercats, and you have the Looney Tunes, and you have Mortal Kombat, and you have the tons of DC characters, and you have all the Hanna-Barbera, you know, Scooby-Doo, all those type characters. I mean, there's tons and tons and tons of characters in their IP, you know, group that they could use at their disposal that they're not doing anything with, so why do something with them? You know, I did cover back in June of last year, which I didn't realize it had just been summer of last year, that talking about a Marvel vs. Mortal Kombat game, because Ed Boon had been dropping some clues for Mortal Kombat content, but also dropping some clues as to possibly some other projects that NetherRealm Studios could be working on. And some of those clues led me to believe that it could be Mortal Kombat versus Marvel. Now, in that same video, I talked about what I would like to see happen with that if it were ever to happen, but I also gave the reasons why it probably will not happen. So I'm just kind of reiterating those in this video a little bit, because while I think that it'd be great to have someday, you know, a Marvel versus DC, which I think a lot of people would like to see, a Mortal Kombat versus Marvel, because who would want to see Baraka versus Wolverine, or, you know, Iceman versus Sub-Zero? I mean, there's countless characters that would be perfect for that kind of stuff. But I just don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. I could be wrong. I could be wrong. I could be surprised, shocked that NetherRealm Studios announces Marvel game, but given that we just had Avengers come out, and then Spider-Man Miles Morales before that, it hasn't been that long, guys. I mean, it was just from Christmas. I just don't think that they're going to do anything with that. Well, I think it's cool that we have people hyped up. I think it'd be better to get them hyped up about a game that actually could happen. And so that's why I made this video. Sorry to pop bubbles, but let's keep it grounded. Let's keep it focused. Let's get back into what people really want, which is more Mortal Kombat content, more Injustice 3, more properties that pertain to Warner Brothers. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think about everything I talked about? I know that you probably are excited about Marvel vs. DC, or Marvel vs. MK, or just a Marvel fighting game in general. So let me know those thoughts down below, and do you agree with the reasons why it probably won't happen? That's it for this video, guys. If you enjoyed, hit that like button. For more like this one, make sure you subscribe to this channel. I'll see you guys next time on The Mashup.